So joining me now, Airline Weekly Managing Partner Seth Kaplan, plus aviation expert and pilot Bruce Buck Rogers. So welcome to both of you. And Seth, just kicking it off with you, we heard from the Malaysian Airlines CEO saying that these batteries are not regarded as dangerous goods. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's, as Evan said a minute ago, just something on the list. Very much just that. A very common thing, certainly, to ship batteries like that. Certainly, absolutely, there need to be precautions, and there typically are precautions. We don't yet know those details here. But, Brooke, keep in mind, even if we determine something more about these batteries, it still takes a huge logical leap to think that those batteries caused the fire aboard this plane, a plane that kept flying under some control for a number of hours.
6 hours later.
With the pilot not trying to get the plane on the ground. It's a big logical leap.
Well, at the same time, I guess we don't know exactly how much longer. We don't know when the fire started. We don't know a lot of things. But Buck, here's my question, because I hope you do know this. If there, we know that there were these lithium-ion batteries in the cargo hold. What about the cargo hold itself? I mean, I have to imagine there is some sort of protective shell or casing in case of a fire or explosion. Can you tell me about that?
Sure, absolutely, Brooke. First off, let's get back to these batteries. Those batteries, because they're considered hazardous cargo, there should have been a hazardous cargo manifest list that the airline would have provided to the pilots before even the airplane taxis and takes off. That list really needs to be published. We need to know how many batteries are on board. We need to know where they're located, and again, that'll all be on the hazardous manifest list for those batteries. Now, as far as the suppression system goes, the 777 is a very safe airplane, amazingly safe. If there was a cargo fire detected, the pilots would have been aware of that. There would have been red lights that went off in the cockpit, and they would have pushed some buttons and suppressed the fire. Now, we know that lithium-ion batteries are very flammable and produce toxic fumes. So perhaps while they were extinguishing this fire, if that was the case. Again, we don't know.
There's a lot of ifs in this story, a lot of ifs.
Correct. And but we do know that the cargo system has a great fire suppression system. It also would evacuate the smoke, poured it outside the aircraft, if that was the case. But we've got to remember that if there was some kind of smoke or fumes that were coming out of the cockpit area, that these things are very toxic. Even if you put the oxygen mask on, which would be the very first thing these pilots would have done in this situation.
Because bells and whistles, et cetera, as you point out, would be going off.
Right, and the very first step is to don your oxygen mask, and to establish crew communications would be the next step. Even as you're doing this, you're being exposed, your skin is being exposed to very toxic fumes possibly that could make you unconscious. And incidentally, these fires could also cause circuit breakers to pop. For example, the ACARS, we know that was shut down. The transponder, that could have been affected by this as well. Fires are very bad on an airplane if that's the case.
I can only imagine so. Here's my next question, because we mentioned this phone call that this pilot made. Again, this is reporting by the Sun newspaper, but the Malaysian Airlines CEO made mention of it this morning. They're looking into it. This phone call that the pilot made some 8 minutes before takeoff to both of you, Seth and then Buck. Is that unusual for a pilot or even a co-pilot to pick up their cell phone before they head up in the air?
It's not. There are regulations, and quite frankly, I don't know what the regulations are in Malaysia per se, but certainly, there are times when you're not supposed to do things that you do, just as passengers, as you know, certainly do things at times during flight. You know that you're supposed to have your phone in airplane mode, even though you're not allowed to have it on. Pilots at times do things too. They've told me that. So it's, again, one of those things on the list. Certainly they'll look into it as they should, but is that likely to be the smoking gun here, as it were? Probably not.
Buck, you agree?
I agree totally. It's very common that we would use a cell phone to call dispatch or to call somebody on the ground to help us with pushing the airplane back. I mean, I said it's very common. It happens occasionally, but we don't know where the phone call was made to, so it's I don't think this. I agree with
Okay.
Seth. This is not the smoking gun.
Okay, and then finally, we're bringing up all these things that we would like to know, we in the public or you as experts, and the last thing that a lot of people have been calling for is the transcript, right, between the cockpit and air traffic control, because we know that all right good night purportedly from the co-pilot happened at 1:19 in the morning, but that was some, 40 or so minutes after takeoff. And so my question would be, Buck, let me stay with you. Why do you think those aren't being made public yet? Those conversations?
Well, yeah, I think because this is such a sensitive situation and we don't know what happened, they're holding this closely. They will let this come out. It is public information. It is something that's been transmitted on airways. Airways are public. If you had a radio and were tuned in, you could listen to it as it was taking place at that moment in time. So we will have this released. It's just going to be a matter of time until the Malaysian government decides to do so.
Seth and Buck, will you gentlemen do me a favor and stick around, because the questions keep coming, not just from myself and my team, but from our viewers. So we will take our viewers' questions about this plane, the new developments today. Send me a tweet at BrookeBCNN, hashtag it 370Qs. Those guys will stick around.